morning, Gavin.
Good morning, Rich. How are you doing?
I'm blessed, brother. How about you?
Uh, Enjoying a fine Friday here in Wisconsin. I think it was 3 degrees yesterday. It's a warmer 12 today. So just happy to be here. Honored to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, man. I'm glad Mike put us together. This is it's gonna be really good. Mike
Awesome.
was like, "Hey, you want to talk to Gavin? He's a former 160th guy, and he works with me up here at Delta Defense." I'm like, "Absolutely, man! Opportunity to talk to another warrant officer. We're like unicorns bouncing around."
Yep. Yeah, we do exist. We are real.
Real, that's right. Freddie Merck is on up there in Montana. He is coin number 800. Good morning, brother. Hope you're doing well. Guys and gals out there in Warrior Nation, go ahead and like and hit that share button. And I'll go ahead and read Gavin Glasenapp's amazing bio here. He is the training operations manager at Delta Defense, supporting the U.S. Concealed Carry Association's nationwide instructor network. He brings a deep operational background built over 2 decades in the U.S. Army, where he retired as a Chief Warrant Officer Four. Gavin spent the first half of his career in the AH-64 Alpha and AH-64 Delta Apache community, serving as both an instructor pilot and standardization instructor pilot. He later assessed into the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, flying the MH-47 Golf on heavy assault missions in direct support of special mission units. Across 12 combat deployments, flying both the Apache and Chinook, he gained extensive experience in complex, high-risk environments. After the Army, Gavin served as a police officer in southeastern Wisconsin, completing advanced law enforcement training, including alert and SWAT school. He now leverages his combined military, law enforcement, and instructional expertise to strengthening USCCA's training programs and enhancing the readiness and capability of responsible armed Americans. Gavin enjoys multiple hobbies and spending time, especially traveling with his soon-to-be bride, Miss Jessica. Good morning, brother.
Yes, sir. Good morning.
Alan is on from Virginia, triple occupied Virginia. Oh, I'm assuming our good friend Steve Washington is on. I'm assuming, Gavin, you know him well.
Yep. He is a member of our team. He's one of our regional training managers.
Yeah, Steve is a fantastic American. I'm proud to know him. He says he's at O'Hare Airport. Better you than me, Steve.
Yeah, no doubt on that.
Yeah. Kyle's on from the Philippines. Good to have you guys on here. I won't belabor it, man. I'm really excited to talk to you, man. We'll just jump right into it. Both feet.
Sure.
No warm up rounds, Gavin. We're going.
Oh man. Okay. I should have stretched.
Yeah. I don't want to pull a hammy on these questions here. What inspired you to pursue a career in the Army?
So I was a military brat. I grew up in the Air Force. My dad had a fantastic career in the Air Force. He did 21 years in the Air Force. Senior non-commissioned officer, was a firefighter in the Air Force. So grew up on Air Force bases. So always had that, military lifestyle from day one. So that was, kind of the initial inspiration was, your dad. You look up to your dad, obviously. And it always had a passion for aviation. Obviously, growing up on Air Force bases kind of helped with that. Being around it, hearing it, smelling it every day as a kid. So it just seemed like a natural fit. The going into aviation, the Army was a little more alluring because I busted my butt in high school. I was, that kid, the National Honor Society, all the AP classes, et cetera, et cetera. And it really boiled down to I was kind of tired of studying, and I wasn't ready for college right away. I wasn't ready for that college life and academic life. I wanted to jump, 2 feet forward into the military. So I heard about the warrant officer program. Long and short of it is, so you're telling me I can be an officer and I can fly helicopters and I don't need to go to college right now. So that was kind of alluring to 18, 19-year-old Gavin at the time. So that played a big part in that. So that's kind of what led me down that road. So I initially enlisted. I enlisted in the Army. I would still recommend to anybody interested in the warrant officer program. It's so much easier to apply from within the Army. Mm-hmm. You can actually apply for the aviation warrant program. They call it street to seat, where you can actually apply as a civilian. But I enlisted, which I think makes it a little easier. Enlisted as a 19 Delta, as a cavalry scout, which was a great intro to the Army. Did that for about a year and a half before my packet got accepted. So as a young E3 stationed at Fort Polk, Louisiana with the 2nd Armored Cav, I got picked up to go to flight school. So
Okay, let's go back to that one right there. So
sure,
when you enlisted originally, and I was on recruiting duty for quite some time, so
I
the
saw that.
recruiting pieces, yeah, the recruiting piece is always fascinating to me. So when you got recruited, did you know about the Warrant Officer Flight Program?
I did. I distinctly remember going to a movie sometime in the middle '90s, and at the time, the movie theater was right next door to Recruiter. So this is probably when I was a sophomore, junior in high school, and always would pick up a few brochures of the Recruiter because they look cool. All the high speed stuff on the those mid '90s brochures, and one of them was on the Warrant Officer Flight Program. So that one kind of stuck with me. Those brochures actually work. That stuck with me. And 2 years later, when you're considering those options as you're graduating high school, you're like, what about that Warrant Officer Program? So
So that was not something that you could have done when you first went to see the recruiter when you were eligible to enlist?
you can, but actually, my recruiter at the time, he was an aviation NCO. I believe he was a crew chief on either Hueys or Blackhawks or both. But he had recommended to me at the time, why don't you just enlist in the Army, get in the Army and apply? And I would still stand by that. I think that's the best way to go.
Mhm.
Street to seat is difficult and not a knock on recruiters, but unfortunately, a lot of recruiters aren't familiar with that program.
Sure, yeah.
And unless you've got a really dedicated recruiter who's willing to do that extra homework for this guy who wants to apply for the Warrant Officer Program. Yeah, and hopefully that's gotten better over the years where the street to seat opportunity is a little more, but it's there. You enlist, you go to 8 weeks of, well, I think it's 9 weeks now for basic, and then you roll right into Warrant Officer Candidate School. So that's an option.
Mhm. Hey, Rob Pincus is on. Good morning, Rob. Have to see you,
Morning,
man.
Rob.
Doug is on. So stop in to say a quick hello. Coin number 78. Doug was rolling through Tennessee, and we met for coffee yesterday. So I hope you're having fun here in the great state of Tennessee. Travis is on. Uh, so oddly enough, man, when I was a sergeant back in '94, the Marine Times had a big article like, "Hey, the Army is looking for warrant officer pilots, and they're
Right.
taking Marines." And I was like, "Uh-oh, there we go," because that's when I went in to see the Marine recruiters. First thing I said was, "Do y'all have the warrant officer flight program?" Like, nope. And I'd started flying when I was 16, so that's what I really wanted to do.
Sure.
But let me talk to you. So the next thing you know, I'm joining the infantry. But anyway,
That happens.
it does happen, right?
But
So
yeah, it's funny you bring that up because we had in my flight school class, we had people from all branches of the military.
Mhm.
Obviously the majority was Army, but there were, a couple Navy guys, there were some Marines in there. So the opportunity for the Army's flight warrant program, you could apply from any branch. So
Well, I got kind of I ran up against the catch-22 of the military, and that was I called the master sergeant who Army guy who was a recruiter for the warrant officer program in the Army, and I'm like, hey, I meet all your prerequisites. We went down the list.
sure.
I got him all the stuff, and he's like, okay, you need to take the FAST test. I don't know what's called now, the flight aptitude screening test. I said, okay.
Yep.
Well, he's like, you have to take it in the Marine Corps, and then I'll pull the scores. And the Marines is like, you can only take it if you're an officer. You can't. So I was just like, because man, I don't know what to tell you. If you were in the Army, I could give it to you right now. So it was ended up becoming a dead end for me, but that was unfortunate because I think it's an outstanding program.
It really is. I think the pay grade itself is kind of it's probably one of the best pay grades in the military, in my opinion. I'm a little biased. We are a little biased, but
Mhm.
and yeah, in the Army, you actually get commissioned when you make W-2 now too. So I mean, really,
That's right.
the only true warrant officer in the Army is a W-1.
I know, and I tell sea cleaners sometimes be like, warrant officer, I'm like, whoa, time out. Because technically, there's two programs in the Marine Corps where you skip W-1 to go straight to W-2. I was in one of those programs. So I never was a warrant officer. I went straight from a gunny to a chief warrant officer two,
Right.
straight to a commission. Which makes it a little weird because when you go to the basic school and they're talking about, we can pull your commission, go to the Secretary of Navy. I'm like, well, you can't pull mine, pal. Not pull your commission, pull your warrant as a warrant officer.
It's like, I don't have a warrant. Yeah.
I don't have it. Don't know what you're talking about. So you get in, you apply, you're a cavalry scout, E3, you apply. And what happened next?
This was the twilight of the internet days. I think if I recall, most of the packet was paper filled out. I think it was even a typewriter used on some of the applications, because this would be 97, 98. But yeah, you send in this gigantic packet. I mean, you have to go get, I had to go to the aviation units there on Fort Polk. You've got to get recommendations from senior warrants. You mentioned it already. You got to put your fast test results in there. Your company commander's got to sign off of it. So anyway, you end up with a Sears catalog sized packet that goes in, and then you just kind of wait. Again, this was the twilight of the internet days. So, you couldn't log on to a website and see, okay, packet received, packet under review. There was nothing like, you just waited. And I do distinctly remember coming back to, I was going to say company, it was actually a troop because it was a cavalry unit, but back to the troop headquarters, and somebody's like, hey, you're in the wrong uniform. That typical military thing. You're in the wrong uniform. You're like, what are you talking about? Well, you should be wearing W1. Like, did I make it? So made it. I think back then they used to publish it in Army Times too, but yeah, made it. I think that was the summer of 98. And I think I had to report to Warrant Officer School or Warrant Officer Candidate School that August or September of 98. But you got to get promoted to E5 too. So that was an unusual formation. My troop commander's like, well, today we're going to promote a E3 to E5. So I was in
How
E5.
wild is that?
Yeah. So I was in E5 for all of like 60 days. I would never claim to have been an NCO. That was just an administrative promotion. But yeah, then off to Warrant Officer Candidate School down at Fort Rucker. So if you go that flight school track, you're going to be at Fort Rucker for some time.
Yeah, I would definitely want to dig into that. Bruce is on. Good morning, Bruce, up there in Michigan. Guys. Tony is on down in Georgia, I believe. Derek is on North Carolina. Pete is on from Rhode Island. Don is on from Montana. Guys, please like and hit that share button. We're just getting started. I do want to talk about your Warrant Officer Academy or whatever. So did you have to go to some sort of Warrant Officer Basic and then Warrant Officer Flight School, or was it all kind of in one?
No, it's so what you described first was more accurate. You go through Warrant Officer Candidate School, which at the time was 6 weeks, and that's not aviation specific. That's designed for anyone in the Army who is going to become a warrant officer. So in my class, obviously there was, future aviators. There were intel guys, artillery, maintenance, anybody who was going into a warrant officer track in their field. Obviously I was definitely the youngest person in the class. For aviation's kind of the exception to the norm in the Army. For all of the other MOSs where you would become a warrant officer, usually you're looking at a mid-grade non-commissioned officer. So E5, E6, typically with 5 to 10 years of experience in their MOS. Aviation is just kind of that unique animal where you can't get experience as a pilot anywhere as an enlisted guy. So, you can go at 19 like I did. So I was the young teenager in the Warrant Officer Candidate School.
Wow, that must be wild. I think I was 30, 32, 33.
Right. Yeah, we had everything. We even had an E8 in the class. So, I mean, a pretty wide plethora of ages and experience.
Yeah, I don't think there was anybody probably any younger than 28.
Right.
Yeah, but because we don't have that. And when I tell people I'm retired Chief Warrant Officer, oh, you're a pilot? I'm like, no. Damn it. Right. Johnny King is on. Scott is on. Thank you so much, guys, for the 16 folks watching us live. So you graduate from that and then you do a CBAG drag over to flight school. Is that how that kind of works?
Yeah. So Warrant Officer Candidate School, it's 6 weeks. It goes by in a blur. I just have fleeting memories of it. It's just, big attention. I'm sure it was similar in the Marine Corps. Just the biggest takeaway is attention to detail. Mm-hmm. So 6 weeks of that, you're pinned W1, have a little graduation ceremony, and then you enter, like you said, into flight school. And flight school at the time, and I think it's still pretty similar. Flight school is really not just one school. It's several different schools that conglomerate into you pinning your wings. So you roll right into, we started at the time with aeromedical. So it's 2 weeks of, you go over to the hospital there in Rucker, you learn about everything flight physiology wise, as far as, medical issues that would affect a pilot. So very academic. And then after that, you roll into what's called primary, where you just learn to fly. So that's where you get into TH-67, which was a Bell Jet Ranger, and you start learning how to hover, learning how to do traffic patterns, just basic basic helicopter flying, which primary is probably not too different than if somebody wanted to become a helicopter pilot as a civilian. It's probably, there's no quote unquote Army stuff yet. It's just flying a helicopter. And I think at the time that was, I can't recall, maybe 2 months. Then you go into instruments. So that's another course where obviously you learn instrument flying and become instrument rated in that same helicopter, in that TH-67, that Bell Jet Ranger. Then, and at that point, you're still basically done civilian training. There's nothing quote unquote Army about it. Then you get into what they called at the time basic combat skills. So now they start teaching you the Army way of flying, how to plan missions, the route planning, the terrain flying, all those sorts of things. You're doing that at the time it was the AH-58. And, again, maybe 2 months. Then at the end there was
what's a 58? I'm sorry,
so that's the Kiowa, which is again the Army's version of a Bell Jet Ranger. So
the Marine Corps doesn't have those, I don't think.
No, I don't think the Marine Corps ever had Kiowas, but if you just look up a Bell Jet Ranger and then paint it OD green, that's basically a OH-58. Then you go to I think at the time they called it WOBC, Warrant Officer Basic Course, which is not a flying course. This is kind of your last gate before you leave. At the time it's basically just preparing you to be an officer in an aviation unit, and the level B SEER school was part of that too. So at the time when I went through the Army's flight school in the late 90s, there wasn't a requirement to go through level C SEER. So it was just SEER B. But fast forward to when I did get accepted to the 160th, I did end up having to go through the C level SEER.
Is that the Camp Slappy?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. So it was just B at the time, but eventually I would do C. And then you graduate and you get your wings pinned on. At the time, when you get your wings pinned on, they've changed flight school since. At the time, you haven't touched your advanced aircraft yet. You're a pilot in the Army, but you haven't touched at the time, the 4 advanced aircraft were the Kiowa Warrior, the Apache, the Chinook, and the Black Hawk. Your aircraft selection was based on your order of merit list. So basically, I think I was 6th in my class of 30 or 40 guys. And basically, people always like to ask, well, how'd you get to pick your aircraft? Like, it's based on order of merit. Okay, first, we have 10 Chinook slots, 10 Apache slots, 10 Black Hawk slots. Hey, you're first in the class. What do you want? I want Black Hawks. Boom. Okay, there goes a Black Hawk slot. Number 2, what do you want? So anyway, I ended up with Apaches, which I wanted, and don't want to make it sound that way. But you've got your wings, you're an Army aviator, but you got to learn your advanced aircraft. So you go to another.
So you hadn't even flown an Apache at that point.
No, you hadn't. Wow. They've since changed flight school to where you start getting into your advanced aircraft throughout that pipeline. But so you got to go to the Apache course, which for me ended up being a very long time. Long story short, the Apache fleet ended up getting grounded while I was in that class. So there was a long lull where we didn't fly, and I ended up staying at Rucker a little longer than planned. But
let me ask you this, because when I soloed at 16, it was a very, very memorable experience. What was your solo like as an Army guy?
So at the time, it wasn't a true solo. It wasn't just you in the cockpit, but the instructor did hop out, and you and they call it your stick buddy, which is similar to a battle buddy if you've been in the Army, but your stick buddy, and you go fly a couple traffic patterns. Okay. So it's 2 students, but you're not solo per se. And you'll do that. We did that again in the basic combat skills course too.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Never truly by yourself. I've never flown a helicopter by myself.
To this day, you haven't?
To this day, every aircraft I was qualified to fly in the Army by regulation had a 2-pilot minimum. So,
wow, that's crazy. That's my buddy Chad. He retired as a Army Master Sergeant, First Sergeant. Forgive me, Chad, if you're watching this morning. So thank you to the 21 folks. And then he went to flight school, and he just sent me some pictures. He soloed he ferried a helo back from California to Tennessee by himself in the cockpit all the way across country.
Right.
I mean, he stopped every night, but gassed up. But that's wild, man. That makes sense. I mean, the military, I can see them doing that. I mean, hell, they don't let you go on liberty by yourself. So they'll let you fly a helo by yourself.
Yeah, there's a couple airframes in the Army inventory that are authorized single pilot, but that never applied to me. I never gotten any of those airframes.
Tony is on. Let's see. Rob says, I sold at 17, almost shot myself. What was your experience, Rich? Yeah, I was 16 years old in high school, and 1986. Top Gun had come out in 1986, and I was like, "This is it, man. This is what Rich Brown wants to do." And I think I was on my 10th or 11th hour, and I had the guy that was the instructor had a really thick Dutch accent, Willem van Leeuwen.
Nice.
And we taxi out there, and he's like, "You think you can fly this?" I'm like, "Yeah, I think so." He goes, "Yeah, I think so too." He unbelts himself and just gets out and shuts the door and literally lays down in the grass. And I'm like, "Okay," and I think he told me to do 3 touch and goes and come back and pick me up. And for me, it was one of those, like Steve Jobs explains how when him and Wozniak figured out something, and that they could manipulate the phones, and because
Right.
me and my friend could hijack billions of dollars worth of technology built by adults and play with it. And I felt that way too. I don't know if that makes sense, Gavin, but I just do what they tell me to do. So I'm like, I can learn anything. That was kind of the takeaway. Like, I can pay somebody. I made $3.35 at McDonald's, and flight was maybe this is 1986. So to rent the plane and the instructor was maybe 50 something dollars. So I could work 20 hours at McDonald's, take my money, and then pay it for 1 hour to fly. You know what I mean? So yeah, I still kind of feel that way. I can hire an expert or read a book and learn anything I want to learn. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. I mean, as long as I'm properly trained and somebody shows me the way, I'll figure it out.
So you report to your first, is it called an Apache squadron? What's the naming convention there?
Actually, you're correct, because my first assignment as a alpha model Apache pilot was to Korea, and it was a cavalry unit. So it was a squadron. It was the 6-6 Cav Squadron out of Wonju, South Korea. So that was my first assignment as an Apache guy.
And how long were you there before you went to selection for the 160th?
Quite some time. I did a year in Korea. Then I got stationed at Fort Bragg with there was the 3rd of the 229th, which was in the 18th Airborne Corps, and it eventually fell under the 82nd. But I was there for 3 or 4 years, and then I got an assignment to Germany, which was another 3-year rotation out to Illesheim, Germany, and that is when I dropped my 160th packet. So I was an Apache guy for maybe 9 years before.
Oh wow, okay.
I assessed.
Now, let me go back just a little bit. What was it like being you're an officer in the American Armed Forces, you're a pilot, and yet you still can't drink a drop of grain alcohol? How'd that make you feel?
So yeah, I actually going back a little ways, when I talked about that Apache course, the AQC, the Advanced Qualification Course, that's when I turned 21. So I think I was 19, almost 20 when I started Warrant Officer Candidate School. So by the time, fast forward to the Apache course, I think that's when I turned 21. So that night started at the Fort Rucker Officer Club, and it's kind of a blur from there.
I bet it did. I've always had a problem with that. If you got a cat card, man, you should be able to. I saw one where this young Marine, he lost his legs in Afghanistan. The dad was pushing him, in his wheelchair. And he was like, I can't even take my son to get a beer. He lost his legs for this nation, and he can't drink for another 8 months. It's just,
I agree. There should be some exceptions for that. There's a waiver. There should be a waiver for that.
Yeah. Purple Heart, buddy. I think you earned it.
Yeah. Let's get this guy a beer.
My brother's on this one. Good morning, Jeff. He says, wasn't Pete Comedeca's brother with the 160th? I don't know. I'm not. Pete Comedeca was a good family friend. I'm not sure if his brother was or not. So you put in the package. You've been flying for 9 years, Gavin. How did that work?
Yeah, it's at least at the time. Again, I'll throw that disclaimer out. I'm sure things have probably changed over the years, but at the time, to get into the 160th, it started with, again, another paper application. Thick as a Sears catalog that goes into a manila envelope off to Fort Campbell, Kentucky. So that's just to apply for an assessment. So you got this paper packet, obviously everything from, again, letters of recommendation, your last couple of officer evaluation reports, things like that. And then you're just hoping to get an assessment invite, which I eventually got. I got to go with actually another one of the instructor pilots that I work with in Germany. We both went together. And off you go. You get a 1 week TDY out to Fort Campbell, Kentucky for the assessment.
Had you already been flying missions for GWAT at this point?
Oh yeah. At this point, I had done a Afghanistan deployment. Mm-hmm. And skipping ahead, I favorably assessed with the 160th, but that was 2 months before a deployment that I was supposed to do with that unit I was stationed with in Germany. And the 160th is like, hey, I'm getting ahead of myself, but you passed. We want you to be in the unit, but your unit's deploying in 2 months. We're not doing that to your unit. We're not taking an instructor pilot out of that unit, go forth, do great things, go on that Iraq deployment, which at the time that was 2007. So that was the surge time. So that was that turned out to be a 15-month deployment to Iraq.
Whoa.
So.
And they held your spot at the 160.
They did. You're like, we're going to hold your spot, but we're not going to pull you from your unit, 2 months before deployment, which it makes sense.
Who were your customers then? I mean, who are you attached to or what have you in Iraq?
So actually it worked out pretty well. I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but during that Iraq deployment, I got to support Special Operations Forces. So I was kind of tasked out to that. So, which was good for me since I was heading to the 160th after that deployment.
What was it, Whiteside Soft that you were supporting?
It was more the other side, more of the JSOC side. So supporting a lot of those special mission units, which was good because, you're learning the mission planning, you're learning the lingo, you're learning how to work with their fires guys, and you're learning how to deconflict with other aircraft that are in the stack for an operation and learning the comms and all that. So that was a good primer or introduction to that world as an Apache guy that was going to Green Platoon in short order.
Yeah. So you touched on a couple things here for a guy who spent 23 years in the Marines I put the con in conventional, by the way. Let's put that.
Right.
Now, so you mentioned the comms. So are the comms slightly different in the JSOC side of the house?
A little bit, yeah. And some of the call sign conventions are different, and just some of the way it works is it's just different. And there's a lot more assets too. So it's not necessarily that it's different. It's just that we're just the bottom of the pyramid as far as if there's a typical direct action type mission, Apaches are probably going to be at the lowest level of the stack. The stack being, you're going to have several layers deep of ISR coverage and other, fixed wing fires platforms, things like that. So there's going to be a lot more assets on the target than you would on the conventional side. So just learning the deconfliction and the planning for all of that. That was super helpful because
I can't imagine. Yeah. So, yeah, well, I could go all day on that because during Desert Storm, I remember, we had the FAC was sitting next to me in the fire support cell that I was in, and we had OB-10s at the time, and then AWACS, and everybody controlling all these assets, and I can't imagine what that must look like hitting a freaking tier 1 target with everything that's coming in.
Yeah,
how do you deconflict that without killing people, especially at night? Right?
Especially at night, and I don't think those FAC and those JTAC guys get enough credit for the amount of deconfliction is a big word in the aviation world, just because you have so many aerial assets over a target, and remember, some of these targets were in Baghdad, so it's not like the conventional fight stops. So you're also deconflicting from the 4 or 5 other operations that are going on in the city that night. So you don't want aircraft running into each other, and not to go down that road, but now with all these drones and UAS that are coming into the play, that's just more stuff you got to deconflict.
Yeah, I can't. I mean, I can't imagine.
Oh yeah,
and it when it works beautifully, and a little hiccup, and people get hurt. So what was selection like? If you whatever you can share with us.
Yeah, high level, I can share some things. Obviously, you're going to have a PT test. You know, there's going to be a PT test. There's obviously a swim test. The 160th does a lot of overwater operations. So you've got to be able to, you know, egress an aircraft and swim with your gear on. So they put you in a bunch of flight gear and have you do a swim test. And what else? There's the aviation knowledge test. I'm trying to think, you know, obviously the psych's going to dig into you and check on you, make sure that you're mentally fit. Did a check ride in the simulator in the Chinook. I had never flown a Chinook before, but I think they were just checking, you know, is this person teachable?
Yeah.
Could this guy figure out the Chinook if we started putting him through a Chinook course? And then there is a night navigation ride in a Little Bird. So that's probably, in my opinion, probably one of the more challenging aspects of assessment is
because they're watching you, right? I mean,
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're putting a Little Bird with 1/250,000 scale map, which isn't super detailed, obviously. And I think these maps were from the 70s. So obviously roads had changed, highways had changed, terrain features are pretty much the same. But you've got a map. You've got two places you got to get to, two targets that you've got to get to plus or minus 30 seconds that evening. And you've got to plan that route. And everything is blocked off on your instrument panel, except, if I recall, your heading and your airspeed. Everything else is blocked off. So you're not flying, but you've got to navigate this guy with this old map. You got to tell him, hey, you know, turn right now, stop your right turn, speed up to 85 knots. Oh crap, I've got a tailwind. I'm getting there too fast. Okay, slow down. So
what was that like back briefing, you know, in front of them? Or like, I'm assuming like they give you the task and the end state and all that stuff, and then you kind of got to put your plan together and you brief the plan, then fly the plan, right? What was that like briefing in front of those guys?
So that's probably one of the more challenging aspects of assessment. Is it's not as bad as you think, and here's the why. You get zero feedback that whole week. You have, and that'll drive a person crazy. At least it did for me, because am I doing well? Am I doing poorly? You know, what could I do better? You get no feedback. So when you finish a task, any of those tasks I described to you, you know, it's just a guy with a clipboard and he's like, Chef, he's like, all right, your next activity is at 1500. I need you to be here. So when you're briefing, you don't get a ton of feedback. I mean, obviously if there was a safety of flight issue, something like that, they're going to stop you, but yeah, zero feedback.
Yeah. When Mike and I assessed for our special operations thing there at the sheriff's department, the first morning run of the 2-week special operations academy, they're like, it's going to be an individual run. Well, I was in charge of the red team. Mike was in charge of the blue team, the students. And I'm like, Mike, there's no such thing as an individual run. No, there's no such thing. We're not doing that. And so I put them in formation and we start running together. And I mean, then cadre just freaks out, you know, chewing our ass out. I'm like, I'm in for a penny, in for a pound. You know, I'm like, I'm not stopping. And so we kept the formation tight and they're pushing us and shoving us. I'm like, I hope I'm right. I hope that they're not going to be like, damn it, Brown, I said individual. But I'm like, I really think at all times we should be locked in as a team. And ultimately that was the right decision. That's what they were looking for. But like I said, you know, it's not even that you get no feedback. Sometimes you get told you're screwing this up. Like, roger that, then I'm going to screw it up all the way. You know,
I'm committed now.
Yeah. Then I'm going to break. So you do that deployment. I think you said, Gavin, it was like 15 months long. You come back and you get orders at that point, I assume?
Yeah, actually, I think I got orders shortly after I got back from that. So that was my last conventional deployment as an Apache guy, was that 15-month deployment to Iraq. Like I said, I favorably assessed. They said, go do that deployment. We're not pulling you from that unit. Got orders to Fort Campbell. So the 160th is in 3 locations. You got the headquarters and 1st and 2nd Battalion are at Fort Campbell. So that's where I ended up. I ended up in 2nd Battalion.
Where are the other locations?
So there's 3rd Battalion is down at Hunter Army Airfield outside of Fort Stewart, Georgia. And then you've got 4th Battalion, which is the newest battalion, obviously, which is up in Fort Lewis, which I think is called Joint Base Lewis McChord now. So
Travis is my kid is at Rucker going through his process now.
Yep. Yeah. Travis is also on our team.
Oh, cool.
I've seen at least 2 of our team members on here, but yeah, Travis is son, Zach, just finished Warrant Officer Candidate School a few weeks ago, and he's just starting that pipeline too. So kind of I'm going to live vicariously through him, see how different it's become over the years.
Yeah, absolutely. Will's on. So good morning, Rich and Gavin from Missouri. Good to have you on, sir.
Got everybody here.
I'm telling you, it's a international crowd here,
coast to coast.
So how long was so you get to Fort Campbell and I'm assuming there's some sort of green team before you finally get on the.
Yeah, you've got to go through Green Platoon. So at the time, it was the Special Operations Aviation Training Company, so every 160th, new 160th pilot's going to Fort Campbell. You know, whether you end up at 3rd Battalion or 4th Battalion, all of the training is going to be there at Campbell. I was just lucky enough to where I was going to stay there. But at the time, it was the Special Operations Aviation Training Company, which is now a battalion. But you go through Green Platoon, which, again, similar to flight school, is really, for an aviator, is three distinct courses. So the first one you do is combat skills. So that, again, has nothing to do with aviation. So that's your shooting, your combatives, your Night Stalker first responder, which is combat lifesaver on steroids, land nav, all of the basic. It's just kind of a back to basic soldiering. You know, that's one of the things about special ops that people don't realize is the special operations world. It's all about, it's just doing the fundamentals over and over again. There's, that's with anything. It's focusing on the fundamentals and getting really, really good at the fundamentals. And that's kind of what that combat skills is all about. Then you go into BNAV, or basic navigation, which, similar to what I described during the assessment, it's a whole month of flying in a little bird. You're not flying it, but you're navigating. You're learning to navigate without, again, most of the cockpit is blocked off. Really, it's just heading, airspeed, and a clock, a stopwatch. And you're learning no GPS, no fancy stuff. Just navigate this little bird, pilot, to 2 targets a night, plus or minus 30 seconds. I need to be skids down on the ground, plus or minus 30 seconds. So if I say, we're landing at 2,300, we're landing at 2,300.
Now, what is the washout rate from Green Platoon?
I don't think anybody in my class washed out. I think the 160, the 160 has been around since 1981. I think they've got the assessment process down pretty good to where
we've interviewed a couple of special mission unit guys, and one of the things that they kind of alluded to is the same thing. Like OTC is there to really train you. You've already gone through selection. Whereas I think NSW with their div group, they do green team is a washout thing. And I like it better where you've gone through selection. Now we're going to train you. You're here now.
Right.
Let's do it that way. I think that makes more sense to me. What do you think?
I totally agree. I mean, there's a lot of time and resources and money spent on any kind of training program within the military. So why not find the people that you think have a 95% chance of passing?
Mm-hmm.
And that guy who has the 60% chance of passing is taking up a slot from somebody else who's probably better qualified. So you're spinning your wheels. Like, let's find the right people.
Yeah. So how long was Green Platoon?
Green Platoon from start to finish. The biggest portion is the last portion, which I haven't mentioned yet, is learning everything specific about the Chinook world. So that's where everybody can go together, regardless of what airframe you're going to, through basic skills, basic nav. And then it's, okay, you're a Black Hawk guy, so you need to go to the Black Hawk course, little bird guy, Chinook guy. And then you learn, how to fly that airframe.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I was an Apache guy. I had not been trained on the Chinook. So, crawl, walk, run on the Chinook, everything from just flying traffic patterns. And then, by the end, you're doing aerial refueling and landing on ships and doing, amphibious insertions. And
yeah, we had in the Marine Corps, I flew a lot on CH-46, which from a layperson looks like the same airframe.
It gets mistaken a lot. You'll see like Discovery Channel specials about the Chinook, and they'll have B-roll of a 46. It happens a lot.
Yeah, but are they somewhat similar or no?
They're similar. The 46 is much smaller.
Is it really?
Yeah. It's when you see them side by side, the 46 is obviously smaller.
Let's see. Mark is on from Ontario, Canada. Good morning. A little late, but glad you made it, sir. Tony says, Gavin, you ever know or fly with a Fitzmyer or Childers?
Fitzmyer's not sounding familiar. Childers is kind of ringing a bell a little bit.
Yeah, I read Mike Durant's book, which is fantastic, by the way. I should have brushed up on it for this conversation. I actually wouldn't mind talking to him. Fascinating story. Did you get the opportunity to meet him?
No, I never did meet Mike Durant. I know he had come to the compound a few times here and there over the years, and I think he still does.
For those that don't oblong, can you explain who Mike Durant was?
Sure. He was during Gothic Serpent, which was, the big Somalia operation, commonly known as Black Hawk Down. He was the 160th pilot Black Hawk guy that was actually taken POW by the Somalis.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'll leave it at that. There's some things going on with the Somalis politics.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. So the airframe that you were put into when you got to the 160th was Chinooks?
It was, yeah. And actually backing up to when I was talking about that week-long assessment, you're actually assessing for a specific airframe. So when you do that paper application, you're saying, I want to be a Chinook guy, or I want to be a Little Bird guy. So so most of the folks that are assessing you during that week are folks who are in a Chinook unit within the 160th. So they're assessing you for a specific airframe.
Is that the airframe you wanted?
It is. It is. So obviously I'd been, as I mentioned, I was flying Apache. So I'd been flying that attack mission for like 9 years. And frankly, a lot of it is flying circles over an objective for hours and hours and hours, waiting to potentially shoot. And sometimes you shoot, but 70-80% of the time it's a lot of circles, and you're kind of an ISR platform, an intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance platform, because there are some great sensors on the Apache, so you can keep the ground force appraised of what's going on around them, things like that. So I wanted to get into a different mission set. I was like, I want to do assault. I want to do the infill, exfil. I don't want to fly circles over a target for 5-6 hours. That was mind numbing. So the assault mission kind of appealed to me just because I want to do something different.
Yeah. Are the Little Birds as sexy as they seem to be for us lay people?
They are. Huge respect for the pilots who fly those things. They're relatively low tech. They're a low tech helicopter. I think the OH-6 was designed in the 50s or 60s. Very survivable aircraft, but it's also very small, which works to its advantage because you've got the MH-6 and the AH-6. The MH-6, the assault version, that's the one you see with the benches on the side. I mean, those can go into some pretty small places. So rooftops, bridge wings on a ship, things like that. So the assault pilots in the little world, just amazing what they can do with that little thing. And then, the attack version, also amazing. They'll put a rocket through the front door of a house.
Yeah. Wow. It's unbelievable. So it really, we should have talked about this, the 160th didn't just pop into existence. It really was filling a need that was uncovered, probably maybe an Eagle Claw or something like that.
Yeah. Eagle Claw was really and most of the time when you look at 160th history, Eagle Claw was kind of the genesis of the 160th. Obviously you had Desert One, which didn't go as planned, obviously. And the DOD realized, hey, we need a dedicated special operations rotary wing support unit. Not only that, to work with habitually with the special ops community. And also at the time, what people don't bring up a lot with Desert One was night vision goggle flying was very much in its infancy in those days. So
they have ANPV 4 or 5s back then.
Yeah, I think they were using 4s, which if you don't know what look it up sometime. But that's the Ghostbuster goggles where you've got the huge plastic wrap around your eyes. So talking to some of the older guys that I flew with, when they were flying those 4s, you can't see your instruments. So if you've got those wraparounds your eyes, so one of the pilots is looking at the instruments, calling out airspeed and altitude, and the other guy's just flying and looking outside. Eventually they cut those away. They call them cutaway 4s, where they cut that plastic guard out. But again, we could go down that rabbit hole, but very much in its infancy during the Desert One days. And they realized, hey, we need a unit that flies a lot of night vision goggle flying. So a lot of the lessons learned that, the entire Army is using to this day for night flying, came out of the early days of the 160th.
I have no doubt. Let's see. Jeff here has a question. Says, is there a huge learning curve going through the various airframes? Good question.
Yes and no. At the end of the day, a helicopter is a helicopter. And frankly, I thought the Chinook, just for basic flying, was easier to fly than the Apache.
Really?
The Chinook's kind of a Cadillac in that regard. But you just got to learn there's unique aspects to every aircraft whether it's, fixed wing, rotary wing. There was just some unique nuances, but the instructors there were fantastic. And then, the button I call it the button pushing. There's different functions and functionality that are going to be unique, especially with an MH-47. I mean, that's the Chinook with all the bells and whistles on it. So bigger fuel tanks, aerial refueling probe, rescue hoist. We had all the cool toys.
Sweet. And what is there's pilot, co-pilot, and what is the component in the rear of the craft?
So on a typical mission in an MH-47 and the 160th, so you'll have the pilot in command. So that's you're the captain of the ship. You're the guy that's in charge of the helicopter. So you've got a pilot in command, a pilot, which most people would call in the civilian world a co-pilot. So you've got a PC, a PI. And then on the Chinook, you've got a flight engineer, which is your lead guy in the back. So typically E5, E6, that's your most experienced crew chief that's in the back. So you got one flight engineer, and then you've got 3 crew chiefs. So that would be the minimum crew you would see overseas on a mission. Sometimes you'd have a 160th flight medic on board there too. Also just amazing guys. They're trained at the SOCM, the Special Operations Medical Course that's out at Fort Bragg. So they're damn near a PA. So you might have a flight medic on board as well.
And what is I didn't put this in the questions. I'll try to give my guests a read ahead, so I apologize for this one's going to be out of left field. But
here we go.
I wonder what selection was like for the enlisted crew.
Well, the thing to remember is it wasn't just air crew. So the 160th, just like any other unit in any branch of the military. So you've got intel guys, you've got ground maintenance, you've got all the aviation maintenance MOSs, you've got riggers for any of the parachuting that goes on, you got your fuels guys. So multiple MOSs. At the time when I went into 160th, they could also apply, again, paper application. And if they got selected by their branch component, they would go to Green Platoon. And Green Platoon there was not a selection for enlisted, but Green Platoon was their selection, for lack of a better term. As long as you passed Green Platoon, you were going to get assigned to the unit.
Okay. So how long was this again? You may have told me, Gavin. I'm sorry.
For all of Green Platoon, all said and done, I want to say probably about 6 months.
And what was the graduation for that like?
It really wasn't a graduation. It's like, you're done. Okay, you're going. This is a company you're going to. Yeah,
here's the keys to this. Here's the keys to the CH-46.
Yeah, there wasn't a big to do.
Okay. So you report into your are they called troops, squadrons? What is the lingo there?
So it'd be a company. So so I was in 2nd Battalion. I was in Bravo Company, 2nd Battalion. So that's where I went.
And how long before you deployed?
It wasn't long. Actually, like I mentioned before earlier in the podcast, I had to go to SEER C. So I finished Green Platoon, and then probably within a few weeks, I had to go down to Fort Rucker for the SEER C school there, which is a month. Then I came back to Bravo, and I think, Rich, I deployed within a month or 2 getting to the company. It was busy. You hit the ground running.
Were you married at that point?
I was.
Your wife support those decisions you were making with your career?
Well, she's no longer my wife, but nah, not really.
Yeah, here you go. That sounds like what I thought.
The past is the past now on that one.
That's right. What were some of your most memorable missions when you were serving with the 160th?
Quite a few. I mean, we don't have a ton of time. I'll hit it high level on some of them. Some of the
I got all day, brother.
Some of them, when I was thinking of in Afghanistan, literally watching, I was Chalk 2. Usually we did flights of 3. So Chalk 2, I was in the second position. I literally watched Chalk 1 get shot down. So, we were RP inbound for an infill. Seeing all and then just out of nowhere, just seeing all the, under goggles, it looks like, I call it the paparazzi effect. When you see like a Hollywood celebrity, you see all those camera flashes going off, like, oh yeah, we're getting it. And literally saw Chalk 1 take rounds in their right engine. You could see them taking rounds in the number 2 engine. And thankfully nobody was hurt. They were able to put it safely down on the ground, but then that turned into a whole nut roll 12-14 hour day, because now we're going to abort the infill. Now we're going to infill the ground force to pull security on the helicopter. And I think myself and Chalk 3 did 2 or 3 infills, because now the ground force commanders got, okay, now I got to come up with a plan for a down Chinook. Okay, I want guys here. I want guys here. And then obviously now we're running low on gas, so we got to go get gas. And, and then it turns into a downed aircraft recovery. So, what you thought was going to be a 4 or 5 hour day quickly turns into a 12-14 hour day, stuff like that. And, I had a couple missions, when you say like most memorable, the ones that are most memorable are the ones that went well beyond your crew rest cycle.
Yeah.
So, there are a couple other ones in Afghanistan that, they went well in excess of 24 hours.
Who can make that decision? Because my normal co-host for my Monday morning show is a captain of a commercial airline,
right.
Will Wood. And I mean, they don't budge on that, on the civilian side of the house. How flexible is that crew rest cycle, or is it not at all?
It is flexible, and I don't recall, but there were certain gates that you went to. If you were at this many hours, you needed the first 06 in the chain of command. If you got to this level of going beyond crew rest, you needed to get, the first 07 in the chain of command. So I don't remember exactly what those were, but basically the longer the day, the more stars on the shoulder that needed to approve that. But they usually did. I mean, because a lot of the times if it's going long, it's because you have a ground force on a target somewhere. Right. You can't just leave them. So, and 160th assets were obviously pretty limited in a place like Afghanistan. There's only so many 160th crews out there. So it's like, hey, we're not going to leave those guys out there. So we're going to have a longer day.
Yeah. And I know I'm fixing to go off script again. So I apologize. You make a really good point there. You've got your clients, customers, whatever you want to call them, these JSOC special mission unit folks on the ground, and 160th or their support. But then I remember, if I remember correctly, Extortion 17 was flying all tier 1 guys, with exception of some Afghani commandos, and they were being flown by, I think, National Guard pilots. No disrespect to those pilots, but how does that happen? How often is that?
Well, like I said, assets are limited. There was only so many 160th assets in country. Those organizations, those special mission units, still wanted to keep prosecuting targets. So, okay, that's fine, but you're going to have to use conventional air. So that was going on too.
And if that, I mean, I would imagine, whether they were National Guard pilots or 160th pilots, every now and then an RPG,
Oh yeah, those kind of things don't discriminate.
Exactly. Were you in country when that happened?
I was not. I was out of country with that, but I think I had just left. If I recall, I think I had just left 2 weeks maybe before that happened.
Man, I can't imagine what that was like.
Oh yeah, and devastating to that organization too.
Yeah. As far as like teamwork and as a part of success with the Night Stalkers, your maintenance soldiers and all this kind of stuff coming together as one package, if you will. How do you maintain that level of high performance team? I mean, that could be a whole, MBA program right there, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think a couple of things come into play to that. I think
because these are no fail. I'm going to ever try to understand this. These are national level assets.
Yep.
The 160th
national level missions, national level assets. Yeah.
I mean, the entire, fate of the Western world, you would, in my estimation, sometimes rides on the success or failure of these missions.
I think the biggest reason for that teamwork working so well would probably be commonality. So, and what I mean by that is you've got folks, I mean, we haven't had the draft in a while. So you've got folks that voluntarily joined the Army. They probably voluntarily went to airborne school. They volunteered to, go to the 160th and assess to make it there. So you've got these people that they keep chasing success. They're volunteering for things that, not everybody is going to volunteer for. So you've got just that commonality of, I want to be the best soldier in whatever MOS I'm in, whether it's maintenance, logistics, commo, aviator. I want to be the best that I can possibly be. So I think that commonality is kind of a uniting theme.
Let's see here. John is on from Yukon, Oklahoma. Good morning. Tony says, this may be a dumb question, but what really differentiates 160th from conventional pilots? I think that's a great question. Yes.
I would say, in 30,000 foot views, specially selected, specially trained. Again, as I was talking in the podcast, you've got to get through assessment. You've got, all of that. They're going to look at your background, look at, are you capable of this? You've got to get through green platoon. And then, the training doesn't stop there. Unique mission sets. I mean, nowhere else in the conventional Army are you going to find aerial refueling, for example. We're the only unit in the Army that does.
Oh, really?
The deck landing stuff, which is expanded to the conventional Army too, but a lot of unique mission sets, the amphibs, inserting boats, inserting amphibious reconnaissance teams, a lot of unique mission sets and mission tasks that you're not going to find anywhere else.
Technology difference?
Huge. If you conventional Chinook, to use my airframe as an example, conventional Chinook versus an MH-47, just night and day difference. So kind of touched on some of it, rescue hoist, an aerial refueling probe, a terrain following radar, bigger fuel tanks, a lot more of the electronic warfare gear, weather radar, just a plethora of kit that's slapped on that Chinook that makes it, very unique.
Mark from Ontario, Canada says, when you say Chinook, do you mean Globemasters? Can you explain what is a Chinook?
A Chinook it's a tandem rotor helicopter. So looks like a long tubular helicopter with two rotors on top. Doesn't have a tail rotor. The Globemaster, I think he's referring to the C-17, which is a fixed wing transport aircraft that the Air Force operates.
As far as we touched on technology, and you mentioned a little bit, Gavin, as far as like the ANPVS 4s and 5s that I wore back in the day, and then how that evolved. But now, what other kind of technology has evolved that has impacted the operational success of the 160th or just anybody in DoD?
Well, goggles have come a long way. When I left, we were using the Anvis 6s to fly with. So goggles from 1981 till when I retired, that's come a long way. And I wouldn't just say it's the technology. I would say it's the training. I mean, so many lessons learned about how to use the technology. I mean, I think the American military owns the night, and unfortunately that's been paid for with a lot of blood. I mean, a lot of the first Night Stalkers stand up on the memorial wall were guys who were trying to perfect goggle flying. And then, like I mentioned, the technology that helps the success of the 160th, the terrain following radar, for example. So I would encourage everybody here who's interested, check out Razor 03 by Al Mack. He talks about how that terrain following radar was so successful for their infills into Afghanistan, things like that. We talk about technology a lot, but I really think it boils down to training. It's you got to keep train. Because somebody would look at my schedule in the 160th, like, okay, you deployed 3 times that year and they were 45-day deployments. That doesn't sound so bad. Like, okay. But in between all those deployments, all those same special mission unit customers, they want to do stateside training. And what do they need for stateside training? They need helicopters. So yeah, you may deploy 3 times a year, but in between those deployments, you've got, all these exercises that are going on throughout the country. So that next SMU can get ready for their deployment, and they need helicopters for it. So it was busy. It was very busy.
Let me ask another stupid question.
No such thing.
when you're stateside and they're doing some sort of JTF or whatever exercise, do you, in order to get that your Chinook to wherever, Arizona or New Mexico or California, do they fold it up, put it in a thing, or do you got to fly it out there and fly it back?
Actually, 99% of the time we would fly out there, because that's
Wow.
that's a huge training opportunity. So you can turn that flight, and like you said, sometimes they'd be all the way out west. So you're flying from Fort Campbell, Kentucky to California or Nevada or New Mexico. That's a huge training opportunity, because that's a long distance cross country flight. Let's turn it into a notional mission. Let's make a training event out of it. And one of the things when you come out of Green Platoon, you're basic mission qualified. Your goal as an aviator, or actually any MOS in the 160th, is to become fully mission qualified. And that usually happens at about the 2-year mark for aviators. So anywhere from 1 to 2 years. And so, perfect example, we had to do some training down in Mississippi. My flight from Fort Campbell to Mississippi got turned into my FMQ, or my fully mission qualified check ride. So got took receipt of a notional mission, and someone played the notional ground force, and, plan a brief and execute this mission to become fully mission qualified. Once you're fully mission qualified in the 160th, especially as a warrant officer, you can stay there for the rest of your career. That's one of the beauties of getting into the 160th, is I never PCS'd, permanent change of station, ever again. I stayed there. I stayed put. So I got there, and then I retired out of there. So as long as you become fully mission qualified, you don't do anything heinously stupid, especially as a warrant, you can stay put there for the rest of your career. So there's no other unit in the Army will you find more W4s and W5s than in the 160th. A lot of guys that have been there a while.
Yeah, I really wanted to become a CW05, and I was in one of the smallest MOSs in the Marine Corps. There was only 16 warrant officers.
Holy cow. Okay.
Warrant officers and chief warrant officers. Yeah. So, and I think it's like only 5% can become a CW05. Well, that means one guy.
That's going to be competitive.
Yeah. And once his name was, I think it was Walker. And he's like, guys, I'm staying into 30. I'm sorry. He sent out an email to all of us. So that means nobody's going to get promoted till I hit 30. And because he plugged the hole. So, when it was time for me to get promoted as CW04, he's like, hey, you're the only officer in zone. You're competing against yourself. It's a shoe-in, get me your thing up here. And you're going to be the region OPSO out in San Diego. I'm like, I'm retiring, bro. I'm done.
Right.
No. You're not done. I'm like, yeah, I'm done. Because, well, if you get me your appendix J up here by 1400, we'll pull your name off. And, so I did. I ran down the hallway to the Perso, and Fred, help me out, man. I need an appendix J like in 10 minutes. So we put my retirement paper together. I emailed it off to him, and that was that. But yeah, man, the warrant officer promotions, people don't realize, but there's some downsides to being such a small community.
Yeah. And at the time, you're still competing with the conventional Army. So, like you said, by Congress, you can only have so many W4s and so many W5s. And it's not like we were in a unique pool because we were in special operations. When it came to promotions, we were still competing with the conventional Army. And in some ways, being in the 160th can hurt your career a little bit. And what I mean by that is, so for example, by the time I got to my first company in the 160th, I was a W3. So a W3, you should be getting officer evaluation reports at the battalion, brigade level, things like that. Well, I'm a W3 in a company. So when it's looked at by the big Army, that can be a discriminator on your application or your promotion packet.
Yeah, all that stuff that for civilians, it's so weird, right? I mean, it's hard to explain. Like, yeah, I know on paper it looks like this, but let me tell you how the boards interpret it and look at it like this other thing.
It's like learning to speak a whole different language.
It truly is. It truly is. And I like your answer too, to circle back what you said, Gavin, as far as I think the American military has gone too technology heavy and not enough on the human aspect, whether that's doing away with some of the human intel collection, like, we can just pick it up on satellite. NSA can sniff out all this stuff. Like, No, you need to have somebody understand down there at that level that understands the culture, that
Mhm.
can navigate the internet cafes and do all the other things on the ground. So I 100% agree with you. But to circle back to your point also about we own the night, I remember this was 30 years ago, and on a med float, and we would go out train with the Tunisian Marines or the Spanish Marines or whatever,
Mhm.
and they fold up at the end of the day, man. They're
Right.
done. And we're like, what are you talking about? This is when we get going.
Yeah, we're just getting started.
Nope. And or it's raining. Like, yeah, they're not playing today. I'm like, what? You're not a peer. You're not even close to being a peer, man. And
Right.
so, does any other country have anything close to the 160th as far as you're familiar?
Yeah, so some of them do. The United Kingdom has a Special Operations Rotary Wing Support Unit. I know the French military does as well. There's a couple other uh, allies of ours that have a similar thing to the 160th. Definitely not as large,
Mhm.
but
Y'all do exchange programs with the UK or anything like that?
yeah, there were not in my particular organization, but I know some other units in the 160th. Yeah, they did some exchange programs. Yep,
Okay, cool.
yep.
That's a good idea. How did you know it was time to retire?
I mean, really, the way I would just explain is I was tired.
Mm.
After, uh, you know, 12 deployments. But like I said earlier, it's not just the deployments. The deployments, obviously, those are high stress. Those are taxing on you as a person. No doubt about that. But, you get back from a deployment and 3 days later, you're flying to, wherever you're flying to Florida to go support training that a special mission unit's got going on down there. So it's just non-stop. And so really you're like, I'm tired.
Let me ask you a question. When you get tasked to do something like that, and let's say they're doing a workup, are you going to know what the mission is, or you're just like, no, I'm taking them to this objective and pulling them off this objective?
No, it was pretty rare that ever happened to me. Usually you're planning cell, you're embedded with that customer as well.
Okay.
Very much embedded. You're planning it. I mean, there's too many contingencies that need to be planned for. Like we got to know this stuff. And
Mhm.
so that's why, you've got a top secret SCI clearance, so
Mm.
that you can get read into that stuff. Like what's going on, what could go wrong, how do we plan contingencies for this? What are you taking off of the target? We need to know that.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, very good point. What about did 160th, were they this aviation support for the Bin Laden
They
raid?
were. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Friends of yours, or were you there? Or
Yeah.
what can
Yeah.
you tell me?
I know quite a few of those guys.
As far as so you're ready to retire. You ended up I think you retired and became a police officer. Is that correct?
It did. Yeah. Actually, I started the police academy on terminal leave. So I was actually technically active duty Army as I was going through the police academy. Yeah, so the police academy went well. Kind of the converse of what I talked about with Warrant Officer Candidate School. Warrant Officer Candidate School was the youngest guy. Now, obviously, in the police academy, I'm the old guy. Turned into Uncle Gavin pretty quick at the police academy, which was good training. Even after all the stuff I had seen in my Army career, I was pleasantly surprised. The police academy that I went through at the here in Waukesha County, I was impressed. It was actually really good training. And that was 3-4 months long. And then went to a police department. But I think the biggest mistake I made is I probably should have given myself some more time off. Like I said, I'm going through the academy on terminal leave, and next thing I know, going through the FTO program, going through field training, all in short order after retiring. I probably should have taken a knee for a little bit longer. I think just to kind of get my mental health back in check.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you 100%. Yeah, I kind of did that when I retired. Of course, I'm not coming from a running a gun and unit like you were in, but just coming back here to the farm, and we did some renovations on the house, and kind of decompress, wearing overalls every day and
Yeah, I should have
hammering
done
nails, and it was
more of
very
that.
therapeutic. Yeah.
So,
So how long were you with the police department?
just shy of 3 years. So I'm glad I did it because it was always one of those things in the back of my mind. I was like, I'd like to try law enforcement, and I'm glad I did it because if I didn't, I'd be sitting here today with you, Rich, wondering what if, I wonder what that's like. And, you still have all those questions lingering in your head. So I'm glad I did it. Definitely get to see behind the curtain of society and how things can go really bad really quick. And sometimes a community that you drive through, everything looks fine, but really behind the scenes, there's a lot of really bad stuff going on.
I'm so glad you said that. I was trying to explain that to one of my kids. I said, you see just cars whizzing by you.
Yep.
Cars whizzing by. Okay. As a layperson. And then you pull one car over. And let's say it's a upper middle class woman taking her children to a Montessori school, and the bags are just perfectly neatly wrapped. The woman looks beautiful. She's fit. The car is impeccable. The children are polite. And then you pull over the next car, and it's like a Rob Zombie movie. It's like, oh my God, this vehicle's not roadworthy. Nobody's got a license. Nobody's got an ID. Everybody's cracked out.
Yep.
And it's to peel back the veneer of society. You go into one house and it's beautiful. Everybody's well mannered. You go into the next house, and I'm like, I got to get the health department in here. The children cannot be living in this thing. And I think every American would probably benefit from several ride-alongs. Even, what do you think, Gavin?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, you definitely once you've been in law enforcement, you definitely get a sense of gratitude for, like, hey, things could be a lot worse. I mean, there's some of those folks are in that condition, for reasons beyond their control, but also a lot of those people, it is within their control, and they've made some very poor decisions in life. You also learn that I don't know if it's a generational thing, but a vast majority of Americans don't want to take self-responsibility for anything. I can't tell you how many times I would arrest somebody, and it's like they're on camera. There's 8 witnesses, and I didn't do it. It's not my fault. It's like, the lack of accountability and self-responsibility in America that was a little concerning.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And my buddy TC's retired FBI agent. He was on here. He helps me co-host sometime. And he was saying, man, I was doing a bank robbery up in Vermont, and this small town in Vermont, there's like no black people there. And the suspect is a black guy wearing red shorts and a white hat and da-da-da-da. And he goes, I got the guy. And he's like, yep, not me. Like, he's wearing the same clothes as you. You're the only black guy in town. It's like, not me. It's like, we know what the bills were. They were marked, and you got the same mark. Right? No, wasn't me. And never did until it came time to do a plea deal, and pleaded down. I was like, yeah, that was me. He had me.
Oh,
but he never budged. Never once budged.
Saw that a lot.
It's unbelievable. So your police time comes to, okay, I'm kind of moving on from this. How did you end up at Delta Defense?
Actually, it was kind of by accident. So left law enforcement, and I've always had an interest in firearms and teaching, and obviously I was an instructor in the Army. I was like, what? I should look into maybe doing some firearms instruction. And lo and behold, there was the USCCA was having a certified instructor course here in Wisconsin for what at the time was the defensive shooting fundamentals. That was their live fire handgun program at the time. So let's go give that a try. So there was that certified instructor course right here in town. Went to that and ended up meeting some of the employees of the USCCA. And I was like, this seems like a pretty good organization. And 2 of the guys I talked to were Army veterans that were working at Delta. And I was like, all right, so there's some veterans here, seems to have a pretty good mindset. I like the focus on training. I was like, all right. But anyway, long story short, a job opening opened up in the training division, and I applied, and here we are. And
a moment ago we were talking about how there's a current here in America where culturally there's a lack of responsibility, and I want to kind of talk to you about what are the most important topics for new gun owners, guys and gals that have been around guns my whole life, to understand the responsibility of firearms ownership here. Because of course, the Second Amendment, I get that, but
I think at the end of the biggest takeaway, I've been at Delta Defense with the USCCA now for actually 5 years this month. The biggest takeaway I've gotten is just the lack of self-recognition that I need training. You know, look up the Dunning-Kruger effect at some point. If you're, you know, I don't know. If you're okay. So you're familiar with it, listeners.
Sitting on Mount Stupid.
Yep. So there is a huge overconfidence problem with most firearms owners. You see everything from, I bought a gun, I threw it in my nightstand, and there it sits. I don't train with it. I have not received any training with it, but I have this sense of invincibility because there's a gun in my nightstand. Or, you know, you kind of hit the nail on the head. I've been around guns all my life. What can you possibly teach me? You see that quite a bit, which is unfortunate. Or, you know, somebody who was, the other thing you'll see is, not a ding against my fellow veterans, but, you know, I served in the Army from 1971 to 75. I got all the training that I need. So I would challenge that. And the only reason I would challenge that is, you know, when it comes to, you know, we're talking specifically about firearms, it's a perishable skill. I think we've all had, you know, if you take a 6-month break from it and you hit the range, you know, some of your split times may not be what you're used to. It's definitely a perishable skill. It's also an evolving thing. You know, firearms instruction, if you were to look at it in 1990 versus what it is today, I think we've gotten better at a lot of things, everything from stance to grip to, and then, you know, not a ding against the military, but, you know, my experience in the Army, and I don't know about you in the Marine Corps, but like you know, most of the time for personal defense, we're talking about handguns. The handgun instruction in the military was not great. It was pretty minimal. It got a little bit better when I went to the 160th and went to combat skills. They had a fantastic small arms instruction program there.
Who was teaching that, by the way? 160th guys, or do you have contractors?
A combination thereof. It was 160th guys, or it was retired 160th guys that got a job there as a contractor. But a couple of 5th Special Forces groups guys that were working there, too, retired 5th group guys, things like that. But
yeah. Steve says, these aren't my pants, and I'm assuming that's an inside.
Oh, that's the typical. We were talking about lack of self accountability in law enforcement. You know, you find a dime bag in the guy's pants. He's like, these are my pants.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, true. Brian is on from North Texas, and James is joining us. Says, good morning. He is coin number 1702 from Massachusetts. I know it's late in the game, guys, but if you're wondering what all this coin number stuff is, please click the links in today's show notes and find out if becoming a member of our self-preservation community is a good decision for you and your loved ones. Yeah, I mean, I could go all day long on this topic right here. Thank God for the Second Amendment. I get it. But every time we mention training, I'll get some hate mail. Like, well, you're just saying that because you got a vested interest. You know, you and Mike do training. Okay. Don't train with us. I don't give a shit, but get competent training from someone. You know, you don't know what you don't know. I mean, I know that that's okay. You know, you're trying to be a philosopher, Rich. No, I'm not. I'm just saying, if you don't know it, you're never going to know. And if you learned it from your dad, who learned it from the grandpa, and a lot of the stuff that they were teaching was revolvers, really maybe not translate as well to semi-automatic handgun.
Exactly.
Or contextually, it doesn't transfer, right? I mean, there's a difference between plinking a can and fighting with a handgun. And I think that a lot of people just don't understand. Oh, Nick Higgins is on. Good morning, Nick.
Yeah, and that's another big thing is people don't understand that the training that they did receive is not in the appropriate context. You know, bullseye shooting and then learning defensive handgun are two very different worlds.
Context is king, man.
But I think the biggest takeaway that I would just ask your listeners is I would just ask you to be humble and realize, like, I need more training. I need more training. Rich, you need more training. I mean, it's you should have that mentality that I'm always a student. Yeah.
Look at my CV, man. I went to was it this year or last year? Maybe in 2024, I went to 3 different handgun courses put on by other instructors. I mean, it's continuing education. You have to.
Yeah, I went to Gunsight this year on my own dime. You know, I had a blast and learned a ton of stuff. Yeah, I am by no means the world's best shooter, but I'm always seeking out more training.
Yeah, you have to. And now some things, you know, you're not gonna. I'm really not gonna change at this point after shooting combat handgun for 33, 34 years, day in, day out. I'm probably not going to change my grip.
Mhm.
It's just probably not. But as far as like, ooh, that is a better technique for opening a door or maneuvering down a hallway. That makes sense. Somebody learned that in blood. I'm going to onboard that. And
Mhm.
some of the fundamentals, man, I think I've got them pretty damn good at this point in my life. It'd be hard to change. Let's see here. I got a couple other questions for you. When it comes to like your personal principles or philosophies that guide your approach on concealed carry and firearm safety, do you have any that whether you got from your time in the military or law enforcement or even at Delta Defense that have kind of sharpened your principles and philosophies regarding concealed carry?
Yeah, and I'll say that's one of the best things about working at Delta Defense is, as you mentioned, the training has evolved over the years. My training in the military, as far as handguns, was kind of meh. So my learning curve has been very steep. Learned a lot of stuff, but personal philosophies is, if you're going to carry, don't make any exceptions for yourself. Get used to it. Make it a daily habit. Don't talk the talk, walk the walk. Actually carry it every day, train. In the past 2 or 3 years, I've really gotten into dry fire. So I'm a big fan of the cool fire system. So I try to use that, I'm dry firing, maybe 3 to 5 times a week. I always have the goal to do it, Monday through Friday. It doesn't always happen, but dry firing, staying, and actually put it into context, actually, get it out of concealment. Shoot, don't just shoot at the wall, actually get it out of concealment, do some reloads, things like that. So my philosophy are training, and situational awareness. I think that's probably, that doesn't get enough lip service. Is you need to, because if you can avoid or escape a bad situation before ever having to go for the gun, that's a win. So
Mhm.
situational awareness is key, and you should always be working on that. Especially these days, this thing
Yeah.
is a problem. So
Yeah. It does. It pulls your attention. Uh, Situational awareness is somewhat of a nebulous topic that is thrown around by our community willy nilly. Can you put any meat on those bones? Do you have anything that is a kind of a quick rule other than get your head and eyes out of your phone?
well, I mean, so I always draw it back to my aviation days. Right away in flight school, when you start primary, one of the things they really drill into your head is you should always be looking for a landing spot.
Mm,
And so what I mean by that is, especially when you're starting on single engine aircraft, that engine could quit on you at any time. So you've got to auto rotate to the ground. So you should always be looking for an out, always. And I think that can apply to your day-to-day life too, when you're walking or driving. Like if something happens right now, I think that should always kind of be in the back of your mind, not to the point of being paranoid, but if something were to happen right now where I'm at, what would I do? Where would I go?
mhm.
So
No,
I
I
think,
love that.
yeah, always look for an out.
Yeah. James says, we, of course, Mike Seeklander and I and our fellow instructors just had a high risk environment course here in Tennessee
Right.
recently. And James is saying HREC 2026. Yeah, we'll definitely get into more of that. I tell you that the quick thing that I always point to people is the BAD acronym. You familiar with that?
I don't think so. No.
Although I really do like your from an aviation background, that makes sense to me. Like always looking for where's my spot.
Hmm.
As you're moving through a room or as you're moving through a hallway or you're moving through a parking lot, like that's a, but, the BAD acronym, very simple, man. So if you're one of the 20 folks listening now or going to listen in the podcast to come, we've talked about it before, but it's very simple. It's from the Marine Corps Combat Hunter Program. BAD is baseline plus anomaly equals a decision. So
Okay.
you got your cultural baseline. We've all been in convenience stores from Montgomery, Alabama to Seattle, Washington. They're all pretty similar.
Hmm.
Somebody's selling fried chicken in there. They got, the lottery tickets. They've got the Red Bull, but there shouldn't be a deranged trans woman with an axe. That's above the baseline, right?
So there's your anomaly.
Yeah, there's your anomaly, right? So that's exceeding what the cultural baseline should be. Or there's 20 military age males all dressed in black with masks on. You might want to buy your Red Bull somewhere else. So, but yeah, so you equals a decision. You got to make a decision. You can choose to continue. The Red Bull is worth it. I'm going to go get it, or the
Right.
whatever, or I'm going to cancel this trip into the convenience store. So very simple. figure out what those baselines look like in the places that you go. And then if you see an anomalous behavior, make a decision. And normally the best one is, like Gavin just said, find your landing spot, get out of there.
Get the hell out of Dodge.
Yeah. I think I got one more question for you, brother, and I'll let you get on with the day. And that really pertains to our veteran community.
Mhm.
A lot of veterans will leave the military and they're considering, what do I do as I transition into my civilian role? And a lot of them think law enforcement or something in the firearms community, especially the combat arms folks. What advice, if any, would you have for them, Gavin?
I would say one thing I would say is be prepared. Your first job after you get out of the military may not be your last. You're going to have to figure things out. So don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't think like, I've got to find the perfect job that I'm going to be into until I hit retirement age. Be prepared to do a little exploring. I was looking at doing law enforcement when I got out. So I would encourage you, go do ride-alongs. I did ride-alongs with a lot of agencies here in Wisconsin. I even did one with the Las Vegas Metro. So whatever I use law enforcement as an example, but go explore, start networking, go talk to those people in those jobs that you're interested in. That's probably the biggest thing, because you can only get so much from a website. If you're interested in a particular career getting out of the military, you don't want to just read about it. Go talk to the people that are in that career field. Use the resources that are available to excuse me, like get on LinkedIn, start making connections with people in that career, things like that, and start talking to them. Most people, I would be happy to talk to anybody, and that's already happened since I've been at Delta Defense. I've had people that are about to transition out, like, hey, how are things at Delta? So I've had 160th guys or, guys I knew in the conventional Army reach out and like, how are things there? That's probably the most important thing. Just start talking to people.
Yeah. I've never had anybody that was like, hey, I don't want to, people think, how do I get into competitive shooting? I just show up. I don't have a gun. Somebody's going to be running to their truck to give you a gun and some gear. That's just the kind of people that are in our community. So if you're standing on the edge of this community, wanting to be more active as a concealed carrier, man, check out all the offerings, whether it's, what you guys are doing over there at Delta Defense and USCCA, American Warrior Society. Check out any and all this stuff, but go hit a match, man. You're going to find a family atmosphere there. My local matches, we say the Pledge of Allegiance and we do a prayer before we all split off into our squads. I mean, if you're looking for, traditional values and things of that nature, I think it's probably a good place. Got some comments, and then we'll kind of start closing this out here.
Sounds good.
John is a USCCA concealed carry and home defense CCW instructor. It's great to work with new shooters here in Oklahoma.
Excellent.
Kyle's comment is, I say this all the time, Kyle. He says, amateurs train to get it right. Professionals train until they cannot get it wrong. That's right. And that's that brilliance and the basics, I think, that Gavin was talking about. And it was an eye-opener for me from the conventional side. As an instructor at the School of Infantry, fire team rushes is kind of the bread and butter of the 0311 community. And then I read Bravo 20 about Andy McNabb and his time doing an E&E out
in Iraq.
Yeah. And they were talking about doing fire team rushes. And I'm like, that's all the Special Air Service has at that point? Yeah. And they're really damn good at it,
Yeah, fundamentals are fundamentals.
Yeah. Steve says, not everyone is meant to be an instructor. Just because you're a vet and love guns does not mean you should become a firearms instructor. Amen, Steve.
Yeah. Because it's kind of a myth. It's like, well, I was in the military, so I know guns. Maybe. It depends on what you did. I was an aviator. Not a lot of exposure to firearm training, a little bit more in the 160th, but any training that I had while I was active duty Army, a lot of it was bought for on my own dime. So, the cool thing about being at Fort Campbell is you got all these retired 5th Special Forces groups guys that are teaching classes, and some are really good. But a lot of it was, I had to seek it out on my own and use my own money for it. Being a vet doesn't automatically mean you're a firearms expert. You might be, depending on your MOS. But
did you ever fire out of the cockpit?
Yes.
Oh, you did? Okay. Yeah, that's pretty awesome. I mean, probably wasn't fun that day, but I understand the 160th is known to do that. Jeff says, do you still fly today?
I do not. I'm starting to miss it. I've been blessed in the past year. I actually got to get back in the MH-47 simulator last winter, or maybe the winter before. And I went to the Army Aviation Association's event in Nashville this year and got into an Apache simulator. So I've had a couple simulator runs, which was actually kind of neat because it's like, oh, the muscle memory comes back pretty quick. It's actually kind of fascinating. So no, I don't anymore, but I will tell you that I'm starting to get the itch a little bit, and I never did get my fixed wing certs. So I've kind of been playing with the idea of maybe going to go do that just to kind of scratch the itch a little bit.
Yeah. Really, that's all I had for you today, Gavin. And maybe we do a round 2 someday.
I'm all for it, Rich. You just let me know. Give me a time and a place.
Good deal. Also, so true. I know some guys, but no expert. I'm a FUD 1911 guy. Nothing wrong with that guy.
Nothing wrong with 1911s.
Yeah. Gerald is on from Oregon. Glad to have you on, Gerald. You'll have to watch the replay because we are wrapping it up here on Coffee with Rich and the American Warrior Show today with Gavin Glasenapp. Very, very glad to have you, sir.
Yeah, honored to be here. Thanks for the invite, Rich and Mike. So appreciate it.
All right. If somebody wanted to follow you or what have you, I mean, not that you're a public figure, but if they did want to learn more about what you guys have to offer up there, what do they need to do?
Yeah, I would check out uscca.com. Go check out our website there. Learn about our membership in our organization, which provides our members education, training, and then that self-defense liability insurance. So would definitely check that out. We talked about career transition a little bit too. So I would check out, also we have a careers website for Delta Defense. So we've got jobs here in headquarters, and we also have quite a few remote jobs too. So even though you don't live in southeastern Wisconsin, there could be some opportunities for you there too. And then I would encourage if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn too. So I've got my name just as you see it on the screen there. I'm on LinkedIn. Be happy to connect with anybody who wants to reach out.
Well, Gavin, thanks for being on today, guys. Guys and gals out there, Warrior Nation, remember, the fight is coming. You ready?